All right, welcome to another episode of NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. This episode, we are diving into the college football season. It's not quite there yet, but I am excited to welcome Sideline Sports Network insider and writer Brendan Moore. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Pleasure to be here.
College football is near and dear to my heart. I got my Hawkeye stuff on. Always love to hear about college football. We're a little bit further away, from the start of the season, but it's always good to kind of talk about, some of the teams that are going to be, on the rise. Some of the teams, obviously Alabama is always going to be up there. Definitely want to hear a lot of your insights, and you got some great articles and things like that up on Sideline Sports Network, right?
Yep, that is correct. Yeah, I'm with the Sideline Sports Network right now. I post a lot of articles for them on their website, ssn-sports.com. Also, my Twitter page, I post a lot of stuff, recruiting, transfer portal stuff, and just my thoughts about podcasts as well. So,
yeah. How did you get into all that?
Well, I'm a college student right now. Mm-hmm. I've always had a passion for college football, for sports just in general as well. I started watching sports when I was like 2 years old. Like my favorite show when I was a 2-year-old, I swear to God, my parents will tell you this, was Baseball Tonight. I was a huge fan of baseball. I kind of found college football because I'm a fan of Michigan State. They kind of got me hooked when they were really good in like 2010 and 2011, around that time. So that kind of got me hooked in college football. I started a Twitter account probably 2018, I would say, and just talk college football, chit chat with the people of Twitter. So yeah, I've been having fun with that, just chatting it up, and Sideline Sports kind of noticed me. And I've always kind of wanted to go into journalism, but I'm going fully fledged into it, eyes wide open. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got some great stuff. And after this, I'm going to have to get you connected to the Paul Bunyan podcast. It's a Michigan State podcast. So,
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. All good stuff. And so I want to really, dive into, as we prepare for the college football season, who are your top 5 teams, and why do you have them kind of ranked where you have them?
Okay, so I have Alabama 1. I think this is going to be their year. Everything is just according to plan, I feel like, for Saban. The loss last year in the national title game kind of have that chip on their shoulder. I know Bryce Young said, quote, a while back, he said last year was a failure. And you don't really see that with a lot of teams that make the national championship game. Like, that's very rare. You can only really get that from Alabama and Coach Saban. And, of course, the Heisman Trophy winner, Bryce Young. So I think it's the Alabama's year. Best player on offense coming back, best player on defense coming back, Will Anderson and Bryce Young. I mean, I've said it before. I think this team on paper could be one of the greatest college football teams of all time. I'm going to stand by that preseason. We'll see how that shapes out come September, October, November. We'll see. But that's where I'm at right now with Bama. I have them 1. I have Ohio State 2. I just think their offense is going to be loaded. Defense should get better because they brought in Jim Knowles, who was the Oklahoma State defensive coordinator last year. He's coming in to be the Ohio State defensive coordinator this year. If you look at the Ohio State receiving room, they lost Olave and Garrett Wilson to the NFL, right? They still have Jackson Smith-Njigba. They got Marvin Harrison. They still got so much talent. We're going to look back on the Ohio State receiving room last year when they had Olave, when they had Wilson, and then Smith-Njigba, Marvin Harrison, all those guys. We're going to look back on that like we kind of look back on the Alabama receiving room now, or the Alabama quarterback room from like 3-4 years ago. So I have Ohio State 2. Obviously, C.J. Stroud's hell of a quarterback as well. That's my 1, 2. 3, I have Georgia right now. This is where I think there's a little bit of a gap. I think Alabama, Ohio State are clear 1, 2, and then Georgia's probably 3. They lose a lot on defense, which I'm concerned about. But obviously, they reload. Kirby's a great coach, especially on the defensive side. So I think they'll be fine. I think they'll win the SEC East. I like Georgia. Stetson Bennett's coming back at quarterback, so that'll be good. The tight end room for Georgia might be probably the best tight end room in the country. They got Brock Bowers, who's just a freak in nature. I mean, you'll see him playing on Sundays soon. Arik Gilbert's there as well. Darnell Washington. They got 3 tight ends who probably could start at 95% of college programs throughout the country. Wow. So they're just stacked there. That's 3. Number 4, this is where it gets a little dicey. I think I'm going to go Clemson here just because they have probably the best front 7 in the country right now. I mean, they got a ton of weapons, just rushing the passer. So I like Clemson. They do need improved quarterback play. That's kind of where I'm skeptical with them.
Mm-hmm.
Number 5 right now, I've been really high in Oklahoma lately. I'll give
Mm.
it to Oklahoma at 5. They just hired a new coach. It's super hard to win under a first-year staff, but I think Brent Venables, who's their new coach, former Clemson defensive coordinator, he's set up to win, I think, in year one. So he's going to bring that defensive edge probably to Oklahoma, which has been lacking under Lincoln Riley. So I like Oklahoma at 5. They bring in Dylan Gabriel, quarterback from UCF. His former coach at UCF, Jeff Lebby, is the offensive coordinator now at Oklahoma. So you kind of have that continuity there between the
Mm-hmm.
coordinator and the quarterback. So that's where I'm at with my top 5. You have it on the screen there. Bama, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, Oklahoma.
So yeah, and I was kind of scrolling through some of the sideline sports stuff, and I saw some surprising teams that I initially had on there. Utah and Texas A&M. Are those teams going to be kind of on the rise this year as well?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, Utah, they're a team that got really hot at the end of the year, and no, they laid. All 3 of their losses came, or 2 of the 3 losses came in September, I believe, and that was before their starting quarterback now really started for them, Cameron Rising. So he's now gotten a lot of games under his belt last year. He'll be back this year. He's going to lead Utah. The defense is going to be good. They're in the Pac-12, which is a weak conference compared to the SEC, compared to the Big Ten. So personally, I'm not buying Utah's top 5. Obviously, once the season comes around, they could prove us all wrong. So that's where I'm at with Utah. I'd say definitely top 10, but top 5, probably not. Texas A&M's a tough one. To me, they need to prove it on the field before I rank them top 5. Jimbo's a great coach, obviously. He's won a national championship with Florida State. They got the guys up front, offensive line, defensive line. I mean, they got dudes. Like, I think they'll be the 3rd best team in the SEC, but I don't think they're top 5 yet.
Mm-hmm. And it obviously hurts Alabama and so just I mean that's a stacked league, and that's and talking about like your top 5, there's a couple of Heisman favorites in there. Then talk about a couple of yours favorites there, and then maybe 1 or 2 that people aren't thinking about.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the obvious 2 are Alabama quarterback Bryce Young and Ohio State quarterback CJ Stroud. I mean, we don't really need to touch on them a ton. They're just going to, I mean, Bryce Young won it last year, so obviously he's going to be in the running this year. CJ Stroud he struggled a bit early on in September. He really caught fire in October and November. Ohio State had a good season last year, 10-2. Didn't make the playoff, but still solid season. So Stroud will be back. Got stacked receiving core to throw to, which we talked about earlier. So those 2 are definitely going to be in the race, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud. A name I'm looking at is Will Anderson. Last year, I thought he should have made it to New York, but obviously the Heisman's kind of become more of an offensive trophy, even though technically it's for the best player in all of college football. I think Will Anderson's the best player in college football. I mean, probably he's not going to win the Heisman, probably, just because it's more of a stats award, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you see the quarterbacks, the running backs winning it most of the time, and Devontae Smith, wide receiver, obviously. So I like Will Anderson. I think he's the best player in college football.
Where's he at again? Where is he? Because I mean, Will Anderson's not one that you're hearing about. So where's he at right now?
He's at Alabama, so he is outside
yes.
linebacker for them. Yeah, he's going to post crazy numbers this year. We'll see if it translates into a trip to New York and the Heisman Trophy finalist. So that's where I'm at with my top 3 Heisman.
Yeah, I mean, you look at you're right. I mean, the offensive players always kind of get the first crack at things, but when you look at defensive players, I mean, they definitely affect the game, more and more as well.
And another guy to watch out for on Bama is Dallas Turner, who's going to be his kind of edge rushing partner in crime there. They're going to be a great duo. Those 2 could very well be the top 2 edge rushers / outside linebackers, whatever you want to call them, in the country. They could be the top 2 both on the same team. So Dallas Turner, Will Anderson are 2 names to watch out for this year.
Would that hurt either one of their Heisman candidacies having each other there?
I mean, it could. I guess it. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think it'd be a huge difference. To be honest, I mean, it certainly doesn't help that obviously Dallas Turner and Will Anderson kind of be split in stats, I guess you could say. But I mean, I'd rather be stacked than have one really great outside linebacker there for Bama's sake, for the team. So team first, obviously. So
Yeah, and I mean, they're going to be in all of the nationally televised games. They're going to be at the forefront.
yeah.
So I mean, they've got all those opportunities, and a lot of times that's what it is as well.
For sure, yeah. I mean, they're gonna get a ton of national exposure as always. They're gonna be on all the CBS games, the ESPN games. I mean, you'll see them all the time. So when you're watching Bama, watch out Will Anderson, Dallas Turner on the defensive side of the ball.
And speaking of Bama, I mean, is it just a foregone conclusion that it's going to be Bama Ohio State in the title game then, or?
I don't want to say foregone conclusion because we've seen crazier things. Everyone last year said Oklahoma was going to be a team that could possibly be in that title race, and they weren't. I think they ended the year with like 4 losses. So nothing's a foregone conclusion. But I do think Alabama and Ohio State are definitely the 2 favorites right now to kind of separate themselves from the pack and get to that title game. But don't count out Georgia. Don't count out Clemson. They have some question marks right now, but those are question marks for a reason. They can be solved during the season. So,
Yeah, you talk about Clemson, and it seems last year one of the biggest question marks for them was quarterback. I mean, is that solved this year at all, or?
it's definitely not solved. DJ Uyungale, hopefully I pronounced that right. I've never gotten that correct one time. He's coming back. He's got to step up his game. That's just plain and simple. Accuracy is a big thing. But if he doesn't perform this year, now they got someone behind them that they think is capable because they have 5-star quarterback from the 2022 class. It would be Cade Klubnik. He's a 5-star coming in. So if DJU, we'll say, DJU doesn't perform, then they always got Cade backing them up.
Absolutely. And so you talked a lot about, I see a lot about Twitter about, recruiting cycles and everything. And before we get into, this cycle, what are you kind of seeing, obviously as a college student, now with the NIL implications and what are you kind of hearing about that and seeing maybe implications on recruiting and just, the NCAA football as a whole?
Yeah, man. I mean, NIL is just taken just the college world by storm. It was introduced probably about a year ago. No rules, no regulations. It was a wild, wild west, like everyone else says. So that's kind of the problem, I would say, with NIL right now. There's no regulations. Like Dante Moore, I think, is a good example. I'm just kind of like loosely speculating here, but he's from Detroit, my neck of the woods. I'm from Detroit area. So he's from Detroit. He's been recruited by Jim Harbaugh at Michigan since he was like 13 years old. And then this past week, he actually just committed to Oregon, Oregon had been recruiting him, but it was kind of unexpected because Michigan was definitely the favorites to land Dante Moore throughout his recruiting, whatever you want to call it, recruiting cycle or whatever. So you have to think NIL could have been involved there. I mean, kids nowadays, you're going to see less and less of kids going to schools. They're like, oh, I love the coaches here. I love the people. I love the campus. You're going to see more kids. Oh, they're offering me 7 figures to go to this school. I'm going there as opposed to 6 figures here. So that's kind of how NIL is going to be impacting the recruiting.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it, it's going to be so interesting to see how everything shakes out as far as recruiting wise. Like if things are promised up front, and just I got to look at just if there are lawyers involved to say, okay, well, you can't back out of this and that. It's just got to be it's going to be a mess in the next few years. Just trying to sort everything out and try to rein things in somehow. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, I mean, I have no solutions, to be honest. I have said in the past that you can kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone with the transfer portal, because that's a big issue as well. And NIL is if you enter the transfer portal, then you instill a salary or an NIL cap. So you can only earn, let's say, $100,000 per year for NIL money. But every time you enter the transfer portal and go to a new school, as we've seen nowadays, it's very prevalent, that cap gets cut in half. So now you're down to $50K a year. I've said that in the past. I don't know how likely that is that they're going to implement that. That's just my ideas. I don't know how hard it would be to implement that because I don't know all the government regulations and rules or the lack thereof, I guess.
Yeah, and so you brought up the transfer portal. That's kind of been a mess, as well, just with how many players. I mean, on all sports have entered the transfer portal, and how is that affecting what you're seeing in college football now?
I mean, one thing I've really noticed is it's super easy now. I don't want to say super easy. It's easier to rebuild a program. I think Michigan
Mm-hmm.
State is a great example. Obviously, I'm around that campus a lot, so I see it firsthand. Mel Tucker inherited, I believe, like a 6-6 team in 2020. The COVID year, he didn't do so well. I think he went like 2-5. All right, that's an asterisk year. And then 2021, last year, he just bursted onto the scene. MSU ended up 11-2, but they were one of the most active teams in the transfer portal that offseason. So it's just easy to rebuild your team because you can just go into the portal, recruit guys. It's also a tool of recruiting for some schools. If you're not great on the recruiting trail with high school recruits, you can dip into the portal, get some experienced guys that maybe want more playing time. Like at Alabama, if like their second stringer, this guy Drew Sanders is his name. He's a second string linebacker at Alabama in 2021. He just transferred to Arkansas this offseason. He's going to be a star for them in 2022. So you're going to be looking at him like, how the heck did he not get any playing time at Alabama? Like, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how stacked Alabama is, and that's kind of how other teams are taking advantage of the transfer portal.
Well, even Michigan State took advantage of that last year with their running back from Wake Forest.
Yeah, they poached Kenneth Walker from Wake Forest, and he was just a star. I mean, he was a Heisman candidate throughout the year. He won the Doak Walker Award, which is another award for the top player in college football. So that's a really good example. And also, Jamison Williams, he wide receiver at Ohio State. He wasn't getting a ton of playing time at Ohio State. Went to Bama. He just exploded on the scene. Obviously, first round draft pick by the Lions. So that's a good example.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you talk about recruiting. What are some takeaways? I know I saw, a question on Twitter, for your followers as well. And what are some, takeaways that you're seeing from the 2023 recruiting cycle?
I think the obvious one is Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman's first year coach this year. This is his first actual cycle for full year recruiting cycle 2023. He's ranked number 1 right now, or he might be number 2. I think Ohio State actually took the number 1 spot from him, but he's still number 2. I mean, that's incredible for Marcus Freeman. Like Brian Kelly went from Notre Dame to LSU, the former head coach there. Freeman takes over, and he's just recruiting like a madman over there. So that's probably the biggest takeaway is Notre Dame is just killing it. Another team that's doing really good, and not to many people's surprise, is Miami. Mario Cristobal went from Oregon to Miami. He's from Miami, so that's huge for him. He's been recruiting really well with the Hurricanes. I mean, that's, again, to the shock of no one. He's a great recruiter. Even at Oregon, he was a great recruiter. But him going back home, he knows what South Florida is all about. So he's been doing great with Miami. I think another takeaway would be Michigan. They've been doing quite poor on the recruiting trail. And I mean, I think they'll be fine in the long run. I think they'll still finish with the top 25 class by December, January, February, by that time. Early signing day and signing day comes around, but they lost out on two key quarterbacks right from their backyard, or they had ties with them. We talked about Dante Moore from Detroit, right in their backyard, right? Ann Arbor's just a drive down the road from Detroit. Should have gotten him. Lloyd Carr's grandson, CJ Carr, and of course Lloyd Carr was at Michigan for a while. He committed to Notre Dame with Marcus Freeman. So Michigan should have been able to get him too, because that's another loss that they should have probably had, that they had a big advantage going into that recruiting cycle with CJ Carr there.
Do you think the Harbaugh flirting with the NFL had anything to do with that? Or
I think it definitely could have, because obviously that gives the impression to the kids that, hey, I don't know if this guy's fully committed. He wants to go to the NFL. I don't know if he's fully committed to Michigan. I don't think it's going to be a big issue on the field. But in the recruiting trail, I think probably definitely played a factor.
And when you look at the recruiting, I mean, how have you seen some of these classes kind of where they're top ranked classes and then they just don't pan out?
I mean, of course, you always get that. Like you see the 5 stars rating, the 4 star, the 3 star. That's just a projection of like how they did in high school and like their upside. So it's obviously not going to be super accurate. It's kind of similar to like college grades when they're going into the NFL draft. They're not always going to be accurate. You're always going to have busts. So it's just a guessing game. I mean, I wouldn't say it's really, this team, the whole class was a bust. Like that doesn't really happen. It's usually maybe just this player here, this player there.
Do you know how that the 5 star, 4 star, how that is all kind of compiled?
I mean, I would advise you to talk to someone maybe more well-versed in the
No, that's
area, but
yeah.
I mean, camps are a big part of it. Like Elite
Mhm.
11 just happened, or the
Mm.
Elite 11 finals in LA just happened a few weeks ago. So that's obviously big. Yeah, a lot of camps. And of course, like the evaluators at 24/7 Sports, ESPN, Rivals, all these companies, they'll look at the tape, they'll watch the games, they'll rate you, just you 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, really unranked. They don't really rank everyone necessarily, but yeah.
It's interesting when you go like football because they got positions, they got different things that they can rank them on.
Yeah.
Basketball is different. You can see them against each other. So football is different. I mean, you can see them maybe throw, to receiver, but there's just a lot more variables in football to really,
hmm
translate.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, basketball, like you said, they're going up against each other, like power forward versus power forward, who's going to outmuscle each other. They're going right at it, tooth and nail. Football's kind of different. Like I have a quarterback, and he might have literally like nothing to do with the linebacker, maybe. So it's definitely different sports to evaluate.
Speaking of something that's going to be different here soon, the Big Ten. What was your thought as a Big Ten guy? What was your thought, USC and UCLA to the Big Ten, and what's next? In the changing conference landscape.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of it. I mean, when I first started watching college football, it was always built on regionality. Like, oh, the Big Ten's the Midwest, SEC is Southeast, Pac-12's out West, and you see a different brand of football in the different conferences: the West Coast, the Southeast, Big Ten, hard-nosed, smash mouth football, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. That's the kind of Big Ten football I know. And I mean, USC and UCLA, yeah, from a business perspective, it's a good addition to add that LA market to kind of increase that. I guess that, what do you call it? Like your
The imprint
footprint.
as well. Yep.
Yeah, your
Yep.
imprint footprint for the TV rights that are coming up for the Big Ten. So it's, from a business perspective, is a great move for the Big Ten. Personally, as a fan, I definitely don't like it, and I think it's going to suck for USC and UCLA, the players,
Mm.
not the athletic departments, because the athletic departments are definitely going to thrive from this. For the players, I mean, the flights halfway across the country, and even all the way across the country when they're going to
Hmm.
Piscataway, New Jersey, to play Rutgers. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I tell you, I'm an old school. Grew up, even before Penn State, Rutgers, Maryland, before they were in the conference, and now expanding. It's going to be interesting to see. You're right that travel is going to be a factor, definitely. It will be interesting to see, these power conferences, that all come together and what it means scheduling wise.
Yeah.
I'm old school, used to seeing Big Ten, Pac-10 in the Rose Bowl, and now it's not gonna be the same.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, another thing that has been rumored, and there's a ton of speculation on social media. I mean, I don't really listen to much of it, but a lot of the Pac-12 teams joining the Big Ten, and then the Big Ten splitting them up into, oh, here's the Pac-10 division, here's the Big Ten division, and the winners of each
Mm.
division would play in the Rose Bowl. That's just been what some fans want. That's definitely probably not going to happen, but I guess that would be a possible solution to that. But yeah, the Rose Bowl is kind of, I don't know what's going to happen to it. I mean, we could see USC versus Stanford in the Rose Bowl. Like, that's not Big
Oh,
Ten versus
wow.
Pac-12,
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, I'm not a fan of it. It's just, it kind of just defeats like the tradition, the regionality of the sport, which was what it was built on. And don't get me wrong, I'm excited to see USC and Ohio State play, whether it
Mm.
be every year, every other year on the football field. I'm excited for that. I'm going to watch the games, of course, but I'm just not a fan.
Well, speaking of the Big Ten, and I'm going to go ahead and just put you on the spot here. Who do you think is going to win the Big Ten this year? Is it, does Michigan State, are they going to stay up there? Or is it going to be Michigan again, or is Iowa going to? I mean, don't get me started on their quarterback, but what are your
I think
thoughts?
you hit the nail on the head with Iowa. I think it's the quarterback in the whole
Mm-hmm.
offense. I think
Yep.
Brian Ferentz needs to go, but of course, that's not going
Yep.
to happen with his dad as the head coach there. I think
Yep.
Ohio State's going to run away with it this year. I
Mm-hmm.
can't see him losing twice in a row or 2 years in a row to Michigan and not winning the Big Ten 2 years in a row. They've dominated the conference for numerous years before 2021, obviously. I don't think Michigan's going to really fall off a cliff this year. I think they'll still be competitive. Same with Michigan State. I think you'll see both Michigan schools end up probably around 9-3, 10-2. I haven't really released my full predictions yet, like my finalized predictions. But yeah, I think Ohio State, I don't think that'll change. I think Ohio State's going to win the Big Ten. Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, probably hovering around that 9-10 win range. As far as Iowa, I kind of see them as an 8-win team. I mean, Kirk's still a great coach. Obviously, they're always going to have a good defense. So that'll definitely win them a lot of games in the Big Ten West there. 7-8 wins for Iowa, I would see. But out in the Big Ten West, I think Wisconsin's a favorite. I think Purdue's a team to watch out for. Aiden O'Connell can sling it everywhere, as I'm sure you know from watching
Unfortunately,
against Iowa. Yeah, so I like Aiden O'Connell. I mean, Purdue's losing some receivers, but I think Purdue's a team to watch out for if you're looking for a sleeper.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at the Big Ten, it's Michigan destroyed Iowa in the in the Big Ten championship, but after they're not able to compete. Why has it been just the only Big Ten team that's really been able to compete has been Ohio State outside of the Big Ten? Why has that been?
It starts and it ends on the recruiting trail. I know it sounds boring and everyone wants to say, oh, it's the transfer portal, or oh, we need to expand the playoff. The problem where we need parity to come into play is on the recruiting trail, because the recruiting trail is where you get your players. And if there's no parity in the recruiting trail, we're not going to have parity on the field. That's just the way it is. And unfortunately, this isn't like the NFL. If you do really good in the NFL, you're going to get a lower draft pick. If you do really bad in the NFL, you're going to get a higher draft pick. You're going to get the better player if you obviously pick right. That's kind of the opposite of college football. If you do good, if you're Alabama, if you're Ohio State, if you're Georgia, you're going to get the best players coming in the next recruiting class. And if you're doing bad, then no one wants to go to your school. Like, let's be honest. Like, there's a reason why Kansas has been in the cellar for so long. I love Jayhawks, but I don't know if anyone really wants to go to a losing team like that. So.
Well, yeah, other than, if the NIL, could be a factor. And it's interesting because Ohio State has, it has the reputation of developing players. And, so, that's part of it. But, you just wonder about, some of their alumni. I mean, if they're able to match, Texas A&M and some of these other, oil-rich states and fan bases, or if they're able to match them, and will Ohio State start to fall off with some of these NIL implications?
I mean, it's possible. Like you mentioned, other schools have more NIL money than probably Ohio State. I'm not sure about the numbers on that. I'm not an expert in NIL, but you got to think Texas A&M, Texas have probably huge NIL deals going on over there. USC is another team that they're based in LA. So again, that's a huge market, probably a lot of NIL money going into their program. So, I mean, it's definitely a possibility, but if you're recruiting really well, the high school kids, then like you see it with Clemson, I don't think they're going to really fall off despite Dabo Swinney's more traditional approach. Like he's mentioned, he doesn't really want to recruit the transfer portal. He doesn't like NIL. He's more of a traditional coach. I think he'll be fine in the long run because he's still getting those high school recruits, and that's what you got to build your team off of, the high school recruits.
So if you were a 5-star quarterback, what would push you to sign with the school?
Well, me personally, I don't want to be a hypocrite because I don't like NIL. I think there should be limits on it. I don't want to say I don't like players making money. I don't like the wild, wild west of it. Just the no regulations, the no rules. Same with the transfer portal. So, man, it's a tough question.
Because you can't fault with how short careers are. Even college, players get injured. You can't fault them for wanting to get money. But you're right. There does need to be some type of regulation, some type of, something just to make sure it doesn't get out of hand, and, players don't get used as well, because that can happen.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like money would not impact my decision, because it definitely would. I mean, if you're presenting $100,000 in front of a 17, 18-year-old, I mean, you would probably take it. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a factor, but obviously campus is a big deal. The coaches, just the people around it, the area, so I mean, if I was a 5-star quarterback, I'm going to the best coach of all time. That's Nick Saban.
Okay. Well, that is actually a great transition. So I'd sent you this question, and
Yep.
Nick Saban. I know you say he's the greatest coach, and he quite, possibly could be, but if everything was level, talent was level, was everything was level, who would be the best coach? I mean, would he be there? What are some other coaches that would be there if all the talent level was equal?
I think Saban would definitely have to be there. I mean, you can't not put the greatest coach of all time in there. I mean, we don't need to talk about him a ton, but another guy.
Although, is that some Michigan State bias coming out though too, or
Honestly, not really. Like, I
yeah,
try to be as unbiased as possible. Yeah, I'm
yep,
a
yep,
Michigan State guy. I mean, I wasn't even alive when Saban was coaching, so
it
I
makes me
kind of
feel
don't
old
hold that
now.
grudge against him. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, Saban's up there. Dabo Swinney's another guy because, believe it or not, Clemson used to be just a middle of the road ACC team. They never were this powerhouse. Dabo
Mhm.
built them up to be that. So Dabo's on there. I'm going to go with two names that maybe everyone isn't super familiar with, but Luke Fickell made the playoff last year at Cincinnati. Uh,
Mhm.
I mean, obviously, they have a talent deficit compared to Alabama, Georgia, Michigan, who are the other three teams in that playoff. But his player development is second to none. Look at all the guys Cincinnati had in the NFL draft. I think they were
Mhm.
third out of all the college teams there. I mean, Sauce Gardner, Kobe Bryant, Desmond Ritter, who's just a straight up winner at quarterback. So I'd go Luke Fickell. David Aranda is another name, kind of bursted onto the scene this past year, won the Big 12. They were ninth in the preseason odds to win the Big 12 out of 10 teams, and they won the conference. So obviously the preseason odds are based on like talent level on paper, and they just blew away expectations this past year. So I go Dave Aranda, Luke Fickell, Saban, and Dabo, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, those are some great names. You look at it. I mean, it's interesting because it there is a lot that goes into coaching in college versus the NFL, and it's it is the player development, and I look at it, college like like Iowa, like I went to,
Mhm.
and it teams like Iowa are not going to get the 5-star recruits unless they're from Iowa or close by, or a lineman, or something that's traditionally, or tight end. Iowa's tight end. You got to throw that in
Yeah.
there. Um, so they have to develop players, and they have to be able to then find players that they're going to exceed the expectations, and really kind of build into the system as well.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned how difficult being a college coach is. Like, there's a reason Urban Meyer left Ohio State to go do TV and then eventually NFL. I mean, recruiting, the transfer portal, NIL, it's just so much. And I mean, coaches you see all the time, and you see stories about them all the time. Like, hey, this is a lot. This is a lot. I think Tom Izzo, personally, Michigan State basketball coach, I think he's done in 2-3 years. To be honest, I think he's said before, like, I don't like where college basketball or college sports are heading. So coaching is definitely a tough gig nowadays, especially.
Yeah, I mean, you look at some of the old school guys with whether it's in basketball or football. I mean, yeah, they have to be thinking seriously about kind of moving on, and because of all those things, there's so much more to think about.
Yeah, again, Jim Harbaugh is another example.
Hmm.
He tried to bolt for the NFL. He thought he had that Minnesota Vikings job. Turned out he didn't. Like, to be honest, I don't know if he really. Obviously, he likes Michigan. He went there. He's quarterback there. But is he really fully invested in that program now? That's a question that has to be answered this season, and we'll see. Or does he really want to go to the NFL and just keeps pursuing that opportunity every offseason, every chance he can get? We'll see.
Absolutely. Well, this has been great. I definitely appreciate your time. And when are you going to be dropping kind of most of your articles and things like that for the college football season?
Yeah, man, I start really ramping up probably August, I would say. Working on the Sideline Sports Network. We're doing a college football preview magazine. It's all digital. It'll be coming out in a few weeks. Haven't set a release date yet. But after that's out, I'm going to be giving out my predictions. I'm probably going to do it in story form, article form, and also going to reveal it on my podcast, which is on YouTube, on Spotify, All Out Blitz. You can find it there. Or you can follow me on Twitter at BMoreCFB. I post links there to all my stuff. So if you follow me on Twitter, you'll get everything for whatever I do. So thanks for having me on, Andy.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. And obviously, hopefully, Big Ten can represent other than that Ohio team.
Yeah, kind of sick of that Ohio team, right?
I hear you on that.
Yeah, we'll
Well,
see. We'll see.
Once again, this has been NFL Outdated Cover 2 series on college football. Thanks again, Brendan.
Yep. Thank you, Andy. Pleasure.